Got a new Buckeye at the top. All right, talking Buckeyes football with all of you, of course, That's why I reminded somebody on X this morning that's like, where was the Buckeyes show yesterday? Please subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. Typically Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, but these guys prioritized Ross Bjork over the voice of college football. Guess we can allow that, even though this is a historic show number 250 here. We got Kevin Noon right next to me, Buckeye Huddle, the Big Me podcast as well. And of course, Tony Gerdeman, it's BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. And it's the Buckeye Weekly podcast. We still have this college football playoff, our college football notebook going on here on YouTube.
We've transitioned to a different project that we can talk about at another date. This is the 250th show, I think. In honor of that, maybe Kevin, 250 pickles,
250 ketchups.
No, let's not ruin the show already.
Okay. Yes, I guess I should have been a little bit more formal going into this conversation, because this is the guy that leads the charge on all athletic fronts. Kevin, it's Ross Bjork. He's 51 years old, coming from Texas A&M. We know that they're a monster when it comes to resources and facilities. So certainly he's been prepped for this other version of a monster in Columbus.
Yeah, Texas A&M has the number 7 athletic department in terms of revenue across the nation. So I think it's important that Ohio State made a hire for somebody that has that type of experience. I know for a while we were all under the impression that it was going to be somebody potentially out of Gene Smith's ADing tree, for lack of a better term. But Ohio State started doing its search even before Ted Carter fully sat as Ohio State's new university president. The search committee presented a list of finalists to Ted Carter, and Ted Carter picked Ross Bjork. And I know that people are going to remember his time at Ole Miss and the Hugh Freeze situation. People certainly are going to talk about the extension for Jimbo Fisher at A&M. But I think when you look at what an AD does and what an AD is going to need to be doing in 2024 and moving forward, when it comes to the fundraising, when it comes to the finance, when it comes to the potential of NIL moving in-house, I think Ohio State really pulled off a bit of a coup, if you will, in landing Ross Bjork. And again, there'll be some debate out there. There's some other people that I really trust in the space that are having a little bit more of a wait and see attitude. But color me in the category of I think this is a pretty good hire.
I think he won the press conference, which every new hire should definitely win the press conference, because that's going to be the easiest part of the job. But then he did also answer questions about the Hugh Freeze situation, the Jimbo Fisher situation. I did like President Ted Carter's comment about all of these controversies surrounding Ross Bjork, and he said a calm sea never produced a good sailor. And so you've brought in somebody who has experience dealing with issues like this. I think with Ross Bjork explaining the extension, there is another job opening, basically, I think, and they had to respond to that. And that's just part of the market. It drives a lot of this, where how many guys have gotten raises because of Nick Saban's retirement? And it's just a domino effect of one thing happens over here, another thing happens over here, and you as the AD are part of that market. So you have to respond, or let somebody go, or somebody walks and it's used against you in recruiting. And so all of these, I'm not saying his hands are tied behind his back, but I think sometimes with the money at Texas A&M, sometimes his hands may have been tied behind his back. But he's he's had some controversies at his last 2 spots, but also Ole Miss and Texas A&M have had controversies long before Ross Bjork got there, and they'll have controversies long after he's been gone.
Welcoming myself to the show. Thank you. had just something I had to take care of there before I hopped on. I was also very impressed with Ross Bjork, also very impressed with Ted Carter. It was our first time that we really had any kind of an audience with him as well in his 17th day as the president of The Ohio State University. Ted Carter is just the 9th man to be the athletic director at Ohio State. And as I recount it, when I was a student there, they had Rick Bay, who was there, and he resigned in protest when they fired Earl Bruce in November of 1987 on the eve of the Michigan game. And then Jim Jones, who had been kind of a longtime administrator, took over, and he was the athletic director from 87 through 94. They had the issues with the basketball program, and that kind of ushered his time out as the athletic director. And they brought in Andy Geiger in mid-94. And as we all know, he built Andyland in his 11 years as the athletic director, 94 to 05. The Schottenstein Center renovated Ohio Stadium and set it up for the next 50 to 75 years, which is tremendous stewardship on his part. Baseball stadium, track stadium, softball stadium, everything else, tennis facility, and everything else that went with it. And then Gene Smith. Andy Geiger obviously was lynched on a broadcast of the Alamo Bowl in 2004, December of 2004. I think Kirk Herbstreit sat over in the corner while it was maybe Mike Tirico and somebody else sat there and basically lynched Andy Geiger over Troy Smith receiving extra benefits or whatever the hell that was. And they drummed Andy Geiger, who's probably the best athletic director any school's ever had, out of the job. And they brought in Gene Smith. And 19 years he's lasted on this job through a lot of thick and thin. The Tressel, thing that came down, obviously, and Urban Meyer thing that came down, and different things. But Gene did an outstanding job, and now he's ready to turn it over to Ross Bjork, who Ted Carter said has a, quote, long runway. Could be there a very long time. He's only 51, so if you figure he could go 15 years before he's ready to retire as well. So in the over 100 years that they've had athletic directors, only 9 people have done it. So there you go.
So the Hugh Freeze and Jimbo Fisher situations, as you guys brought up, are the most obvious, most controversial. It's the football program, so it's going to receive the most scrutiny and all of that. I see those. The obvious difference is on the surface that Hugh Freeze initiated all of his issues, and it was a response to Hugh Freeze and all of his transgressions. And the Jimbo Fisher is a move of initiating the contract extension and making that happen. So did he give any kind of insight that you guys found meaningful in any such way? Let's start with Kevin in regards to those two situations and what he was thinking.
He was asked about it and he didn't really, duck away from it. I mean, some of these things, he did say that, the Jimbo situation probably would have taken a long time to answer, but, my understanding of the situation is that, the booster culture at A&M is kind of unique into itself. And as to, I believe it was what Tony had said, you sit there and you get into a position where you're afraid that you're going to lose your coach because of another opening out there on the horizon, and you've got to make that type of move. And it just, it was just, that's standard operating procedure. I think the only issue there is maybe the way that the contract itself was drafted in terms of guarantees. And I remind people, when Jimbo Fisher initially went to A&M pre-Ross Bjork, Jimbo didn't sign the contract for a long time. That whole thing had been loosey-goosey, willy-nilly. So as I said in the chat, I don't really put the Jimbo situation on Ross at all. And then as for the Hugh Freeze, I'll defer to Steve or Tony, just so I don't get to go on for 20 minutes and use all the good material and leave them with nothing. He did address that a little bit as well.
Yeah, my recollection of the Hugh Freeze stuff was that compliance-wise, there's nothing on Hugh Freeze. There may have been some outside things that came down, but also he talked about what ultimately happened was it was just a personal failing of Hugh Freeze, his own thing that caught him up, and with the whatever you want to call it, with the phones and the phone numbers and things like that. That's not necessarily something an AD is going to be like. We knew this was happening, but we didn't want to do anything about it until everybody else found out. Like once they found out that personal failing, then they handled it. But in terms of defending him early on, that was a thing where compliance didn't have anything on him, so you're going to defend him. That's basically my recollection of what he said yesterday.
Yeah, that's what I took from it as well. That Ole Miss didn't really have a reason not to back Hugh Freeze until the evidence came forward that he was using university resources to conduct this private life situation, where he was setting up liaisons and doing different things on company time with company resources and whatever. So I think that, at that point, he said it became apparent that they had to cut ties with the coach, and that's what they did. The Texas A&M thing was very stunning. Even in retrospect, to hear him tell it, they brought, again, I don't know if he came in after Fisher was there or if he helped bring Fisher there. I think he was brought in after Fisher was there. And then Fisher led them to the Orange Bowl, I believe, one year. And LSU was sniffing around for somebody to be their head coach, I think. And Texas A&M did not want to lose their Orange Bowl head coach, who was going to take them to the national championship, who already had a national championship to his credit at Florida State. They didn't want to lose him to LSU, so they dictated to Ross Bjork, you're going to hand him this contract worth $10 million or 10 years, $95 million to get him to sign it, to stay as our coach in perpetuity. And so he was given that to execute by his authority, the people ahead of him. He said the trustees signed off on that. The trustees were the ones driving the bus that signed off on that. And he did what he was told to do. And then obviously through 6 games of this past season, it wasn't working. And everybody looked at everybody and said, we've got to come up with the money to dissociate ourselves from this guy, because he's not going to be the guy that we think can do it. And it was reported it was the largest settlement that any school's ever made with a coach, times 3. Like the previous record was like 25 million, and this was $75 million. So, yeah, he seems really bullish on Ryan Day. Came out, said that Ryan Day is going to be the guy to lead us to the promised land, in essentially, and what a great day it'll be when we're all winning championships together. And said he's going to lock arms with Ryan Day and do everything he can to get him all the resources he needs. Going to go at the NIL thing, as hard as they can, and take it from there. So it sounds like this guy is pot committed to making Ohio State a national championship team. And I'll just throw in there, for the benefit of those at home, better do it this year, because as we were talking at lunch, now, Ohio State's never had this many good seniors on a team, and they ain't going to be on the team in 2025. There ain't no coming back for 16 of these guys. They're going off to whatever's next after college football. So it's going to be a reload year in 2025. So like we say about Michigan, enjoy it now. You better win it so you can enjoy it now, because I don't think it's going to happen for you in 25.
One last thing on this front. And I'm going to have to figure out whether I'm going with the pronunciation of Bjork, courtesy Kevin, or Bjork, courtesy Steve. So I'm going to have to figure that out.
Whatever.
If I'm a Bjork guy or a
Ross.
Bjork guy. Go with Ross. A lot of people talking about him being, and some of it comes from substance, a lot of it more from style, and every man should be his own man, but that this being a departure of sorts from the Gene Smith style and approach to aiding this giant.
Well, the good news is that there's going to be a couple months of overlap. Ross Bjork, however, is going to finish up at A&M March 1 or something like that. I know that I've already started seeing names mentioned for the A&M now vacancy, Scott Strickland of Florida being one of them. And so there'll be some time for him to work with Gene. But yeah, not every administrator is going to go about things the same way. And there will be a bit of a transitional period of figuring out how Ross works compared to how Gene worked. And it'll be an interesting case study to see how all of that goes. I mean, you can give speeches and try and generate money and everything else, and we've certainly on various shows gotten into this is certainly all about money and how you can get people to open their wallets and give to the university and its 36 varsity sports, something that Ross does not want to back away from. He's not going to come in and suddenly Ohio State's going to be down to 24 or anything like that. But when you have Gene Smith, who was really kind of considered maybe the dean of ADs out there, he's been doing it at Ohio State for almost 20 years and various other stops prior to that. Ross Bjork mentioned when he was just like a lowly scrub at Missouri, I think it was that he was at an event and that Gene Smith was there as he was the AD at Iowa State. And he's like, oh my God, I'm going to get to meet Gene Smith. And, there's no, that wasn't an ironic statement. That was, he was legitimately excited to meet Gene Smith at the time. I'll be interested to see where there's similarities in how they approach things and how, there are differences. And honestly, we really won't have a true litmus test until, knock on wood, and this doesn't happen for a very, 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 very long time, Ohio State is in a position of where it's in crisis control.
Well, and Steve mentioned Andy Land, and then you can, whenever we're there for interviews at Ohio State, you can just look around you and see all of the buildings that have gone up under Gene Smith's watch. And I don't know what else there is to do in terms of facility-wise. So, like, the buildings have all been done. So what else does Ross Bjork need to do other than just maintain and build championship cultures? And the facilities, I think, are there. He did say in the little scrum that we had afterwards that he's going to be going into every building, every bathroom, and every room and just taking notes on everything that is going on in the Ohio State Athletic Department so that when people come to him with something, he has a background on what they're talking about. So I thought that was interesting. He did say it's going to take him like 10 days, two weeks, that sort of thing to get through all of the facilities and buildings, the athletic buildings at Ohio State, because there are plenty. One of the future questions will be, I'm sure what happens with St. John Arena, what happens with the basketball situation. Would it be better for another 13,000 seat arena? Can you retrofit St. John? Because right now what they have at Value City Arena is just, it is what it is. It was a nice vision that Gordon Gee had, hopeful, wishful, but it's never really materialized into any kind of home court advantage that St. John Arena ever was. Maybe you could get the women's hockey team an arena because they're actually really damn good. And so maybe that's the next step for these facilities. But other than that, like, this is about as ready-made as you could possibly hope for as an athletic director. Now you have to deal with it.
Yeah, I could go on for about an hour about what's wrong with basketball and beyond just the coaching situation, just the whole presentation of the sport at Ohio State. Nobody has the first freaking clue what to do. But, this is more about football, so we'll stick with that. Again, as I said, I really liked, or you have to like, his stance coming in there that he is going to do everything he can. to help football win a national championship. And I think that they're not shying away from that. And I think this is the year to do it. If there's a year to do it, this is the year to do it. So, yeah.
Well, Kevin mentions a litmus test, which unfortunately, as Kevin outlines, is more controversial scandal than anything else. It's also when he's got to hire a major coach, and our focus is, of course, football, and whenever that is, whether that's a year from now or 10 years from now. And then the other thing, I just don't know, to be fair, if we're going to be able to compare he and Gene Smith going forward, because Gene Smith just got started in this new era of college athletics, and what Ross Bjork is going to have to deal with is just almost a different set of sports in a certain way. So,
yeah, Ross was asked about what the future is going to look like. He's like, "Oh, I mean, we could have like a 5-hour conversation about that." I'm like, "Wings and beer." I mean, but we'll see about that. But with the Charlie Baker situation, I think Tony asked about that about bringing NIL in-house, and there's a lot of things going on. He's walking into the Big Ten as it moves to 18 teams, but how far away are we from a split off in Division 1A? And how is that going to be operated, and what does that look like? And he is definitely coming in at a very interesting and critical point of collegiate athletics. I mean, college athletics are going to be there. I mean, that was something he said during, I believe it was him. I mean, because we had such a great speech from Ted Carter as well, and a lot of questions there. But it'll be interesting to see what that looks like, because Ohio State, there may be 18 teams in the Big Ten moving forward, but Ohio State probably carries a little bit more weight than others. And will Ross Bjork, throw some of that weight around where maybe prior it was a little bit more about building a consensus? I mean, now, with the dollar figures and everything that's there, does Ohio State kind of have to look for its own interests maybe a little more closely?
You mentioned the judging things. It's not unlike the ability to win a Big Ten title when Jim Tressel and everybody before Jim Tressel was a head coach, when you could have 4 teams tie for it. And now you look today, it's like, why isn't Ryan Day winning the Big Ten championship like Jim Tressel did? It's like, well, if Ryan Day could tie with 3 other teams, he'd have more Big Ten championships. It's a different set of circumstances, and what Ross Bjork is walking into, what Ryan Day has walked into since he became head coach. Just think of the changes since Ryan Day became head coach in college football, with NIL, with COVID, with instant transfers, with the 5th year, the COVID year. Like, this is a lot of changes over a short period of time. And so, yeah, it will be interesting to see how things are judged. But I do also remember many years where Gene Smith should have been fired for stuff that went on. I mean, I think you could say Gene Smith is responsible for Ohio State not winning a national championship in 2012, because I'm one of the people that thinks that they weren't going to get a second year thrown on if Ohio State had taken the bowl ban. But that's we've already debated that one. So this is Gene Smith had a fantastic 20 years. Ohio State is better for him having been here, but it wasn't always a perfect 20 years, and he will tell you that same thing.
Absolutely agree with all that. Remarkable guy and did a great job. However, if that could be proven, Tony, man, that overshadows.
It is proven, because where is the second year of the bowl ban? Boom! I just proved it. There wasn't one. So I know Kevin disagrees with me. I know other people disagree with me. Where's the second year? Where is the second gunman? There isn't one.
Well, not to relitigate this, counselor, but I think it was a case of everybody knew 11 was going to be a bit of a lost year. Ohio State ends up 6-7. It would have been 6-6 if it would have self-imposed. I just don't think that the NC2A would have seen enough teeth in that punishment, because they were really, really mad for 12 to get off scot-free. And I'll tell you this, if Ohio State doesn't have a bowl ban in 12, do they play as free and loose as they did year one under Meyer, and do they go 12-0? I mean, there's a lot of what ifs in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Tony and I will disagree until the end of time on whether or not a second-year bowl ban's there, and I can appreciate and understand and make an argument for all of his arguments there. I don't see it as intellectually dishonest. I just have a difference of opinion on it.
I think that's a great scenario there. That's an interesting thing where if it isn't us against the world, or you're just trying to you've got that motivation. If that motivation is no longer there, but then you are playing for something. But I do think that team was driven by the fact that they couldn't play for anything, and that was one of the things that motivated them.
Yeah, impossible to measure. If the head coach was Gene Chizik and not Urban Meyer, then I would tend to think, okay, well, this was maybe a one-shot deal. But that guy kind of proved that he could win championships at other times. So that kind of legitimizes that 12-0 run for me and their ability to win a postseason game.
Gene Smith should also thank Urban Meyer for his national championship, because Cam Newton was signed by Urban Meyer, but eventually got booted out of Florida.
Yes, he did. That's right. David Greenshield, to wrap up the AD portion of this, and I believe Steve addressed this, did Rick Bay resign in protest over the firing of Coach Earl Bruce 1987?
Yeah, obviously that's what happened on that Monday. The president, Edward Jennings, told Rick Bay they just lost at home to Iowa in just an unthinkable fashion. And I think that the tight end,
Marv Cook,
thank you. I was just getting ready to say Marv Cook caught a pass down the sideline, rumbling, bumbling, stumbling like 35 yards to win the game in the final minute, and unthinkable loss. And so then they were at that point 3-6, 3-6-1, or no,
5-4-1.
5-4-1. Yeah, I got my years confused because they ended up 6-4-1 when they beat Michigan the following week. And Rick Bay said, "I'm not going to do that." And it was interesting. Rick Bay then went to work, I think, with the New York Yankees as the president for George Steinbrenner of the Yankees for a while after he left Ohio State. But he was a guy that had tremendous vision. He brought Gary Williams to Ohio State to be the basketball coach. And he was a great hire, obviously. And that was a wild week. It was Columbus Monthly, the magazine, did a cover story saying the week the town went crazy. And it was turbulent times for sure.
I don't think I've ever taken this show down a basketball road, but was there a better in-game coach than Gary Williams?
Dude, he could take his 5 guys and beat your 5 guys, and then he could take your 5 guys and beat, his 5 guys. I mean, that's how good he was. The one guy he couldn't beat was Bobby Knight. Indiana had their number. Of course, they won a championship one of those years in '87 with Steve Alford, so they also had pretty good teams at that point. But Ohio State got the commitment of Jim Jackson when Randy Ayers was assistant and Gary Williams was the head coach. It would have been interesting if Williams had been the coach if they win a national championship. But again, going against some really good Duke and UNLV and Michigan teams in the years that would follow. So, perhaps not. But, it was those were high times, man. That was good. Good. The basketball was the main attraction at that point. The football was so bad that you had to wait till November to get excited about something.
Yeah, Gary predated me barely here in Columbus, but I'll say this of my knowledge of Gary, he had a very wide and verbose vocabulary.
He sure did.
Folks, we thank you so much for the super chats, and we will fit those into the conversation as we move through topics here. As you see on the ticker down below, we are doing our best to help out an outfit called Amazon. So we are trying to do our best to help that fledgling operation. So if you use the Amazon link in the description section of the videos, we can help those folks out.
Those kids are trying so hard over there at Amazon.
Yeah.
I drive past an Amazon facility every day. There's 500 cars, and 150 tractor trailers out back. So yeah, they must. I don't know what they're doing over there, but it must be something right. I don't know.
If I need to get a kitchen gadget, like by this evening, I can get it with my proximity to that Amazon facility. But
same day shipping.
I've not been helping them. I've been trying to spend less. I need to change my password on it to something I don't remember, so I stay off of that site. But you, the viewer, please,
yes,
pick up my slack. Pick up my slack.
Absolutely. We're trying to push Amazon, last I checked, to 2 trillion is what they're worth. Something like that. It probably goes up like a couple billion by the day or something, or by the hour. It's like the national debt. All right. The AD and what the AD deals with, I think, flows right into this Ohio State offseason in terms of talent acquisition. And there's another uber talented player on the market, of course, courtesy Alabama, and cornerback or defensive back Caleb Downs. He is a good one, and he's out there. And of course, a guy to that degree of talent, Tony, that's going to catch people's attention. We know that Ohio State has made contact and is making a pursuit.
Yeah, you mentioned Ross Bjork. I wonder if he was starting at Ohio State today, would he be allowed to go visit with the coaches on those recruiting trips? That might be the next step in all of that. But yeah, freshman All-American as a safety, started every game. I think led Alabama in tackles, just to give you an idea of how darn good this kid is. He's got a nose for the ball. He's always around it. Just a really, really smart player. I think Ohio State finished second in his recruiting. Kevin can address that. But really, if you look at Ohio State's defense right now, the only thing missing is an established free safety, and Caleb Downs is a very established free safety. And the thing is, if they miss out on him and he ends up at Georgia already has an All-American free safety, so now that they would have two All-American safeties in that defense. So it sounds like it's an Ohio State-Georgia thing right now, and Ohio State's collectives spent a lot of money this offseason in bringing back a bunch of juniors. I don't think the coffers are empty. The new year has hit. It might be time to get them back up because, hey, you're not going to need all of that money next year when you're not trying to bring back 10 juniors. So if you got it, use it. I am very high on Malik Hartford. So if they can't get Caleb Downs, I think Malik Hartford can step in there and start. He started 2 games this past year as a true freshman. The last true freshman to start as safety for Ohio State was Von Bell. He turned out to be pretty good as a sophomore in 2014, was an All-American in 2015. So I think they'll be okay regardless. But if you can get a Caleb Downs, you go and get a Caleb Downs.
Yeah. I had a point I wanted to follow up with, and gone. I needed you to toss it to me like 3 seconds earlier before I forgot. But Caleb Downs is a tremendous player. Ohio State finished second, third. If you're not first, you're last. I heard that on a movie once. So and that's very true in recruiting. The reports are that Ohio State coaches are heading down to suburban Atlanta. Caleb lives like northeast of Atlanta, which unfortunately puts him that much closer to Athens. But there was a disconnect between the Downs family and Georgia the first time around that drove them to Alabama. It seems that some of that has been rectified at this point, but you look at I know what I was going to say. NIL giving is up right now for Ohio State. Both collectives have gone to Twitter to talk about that. The foundation actually was down for a little bit yesterday because of the traffic, the volume of traffic, and they had to actually allocate more server space or whatever because they were getting more inquiries, more, serving more pages than ever before. So it seems that people certainly are starting to get more on board. And by people, I kind of mean the $5 and $10 and $25 a month type of person versus the $1 million straight up donation guy. But I think all of this is important. I think that as of 36 hours ago, I would have said that this is Ohio State has a 1 in 10 shot at landing downs. I think the fact that Day and other coaches are heading down there, they're not having the door closed in their face. I'm going to put Ohio State's chances at 1 in 3. I may be a little bit higher than some other pundits out there, but I think that everybody's saying that Ohio State certainly is not dead in this one, but has a little bit of ground to make up. And Columbus never got any closer to Atlanta. I mean, even with plates shifting and everything else, Ohio State not any closer to Atlanta. So the Buckeyes are really going to have to come in with a plan and probably a pretty good NIL number as well. Because let's just be honest, that's, if somebody wants to offer me $3 million versus $1 million, I'm gonna listen to what I have to do for 3, as long as it doesn't involve pickles, and go from there. But keep an eye on that one. And I think this one, not to get ahead of ourselves, has a lot more potential of success than the other one, Caden Proctor, who probably is going back to Iowa.
Yeah, the only thing I really have to add, a couple things. One, I don't know who was recruiting downs for Ohio State, if it was Perry Eliano, who no longer works there, and Matt Guerrieri is the new safeties coach. Do they have to build a rapport and a bond in 20 minutes to get him on campus, or is this more Ryan Day, Jim Knowles, even Brian Hartline, or whoever, going in there and saying, you are our guy, we have to have you to win the national championship, come be with us and then be an NFL first round pick a year from now, or 2 years from now. So I'm not sure what that relationship looks like. I also read in one report that he was very close with an assistant coach, maybe Robinson, who's at Georgia, I guess. I don't have the exact names or whatever, and that may swing it for Georgia. So that one person said that Georgia is the team to beat, I guess, for him. So I'd put it at 50-50, Georgia or Ohio State, and I guess we'll just see what happens. As far as how they would deploy these guys, there's some sentiment that Styles honestly should be a linebacker. Whether he fits into the Knowles scheme as one of the 2 linebackers, I don't know. He's kind of a de facto linebacker if he's the 3rd safety lined up in the box. But, it's all semantics, how you want to call it. Linebacker, safety, just get the guy to the ground. That's all we really worry about. At the end of the year when Ransom was hurt, they played 3 corners primarily, and that wasn't such a bad look, although they didn't have a lot of success losing to Michigan and Mississippi, or not Mississippi, Missouri, without Lathan Ransom. So do they go back to that to start the new year with Igbinosun, Hancock, and Burke on the field with Styles and Ransom? Or, if Downs comes, does that displace one of the corners? Or does Styles go to linebacker and you go with this just incredible secondary, in my opinion, could possibly be? So I don't know. A lot of directions that Jim Knowles can take this. And certainly Tim Walton is going to have his 2 cents on this as well, with the back 2 and 5 is 7. So I'm interested to see where it happens. Got to get him on campus and go from there. That's all you can do.
And I don't think it's going to be a chance of. I mean, he wants to make a decision in the next couple of days, and there is a bit of a timeline to it. You do have to get moving if you're going to be. There is a student part of student athlete. And I'll throw this out there too. There is some confusion on whether or not you can transfer within the SEC prior to the spring portal. Whether or not I've seen reports from the Athletic saying things one way. I've seen things from other outlets saying things kind of a little bit different. But you need to sit there if you want to have him in for spring ball and everything else. I mean, I think Ohio State would probably need to get kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down, like immediately. So I don't know if this is something that, and again, you find ways, you adjust, you adapt, you figure out how to make things happen. But I don't know if getting him on campus is as important as if Ohio State gets the last shot at him, if Ryan Day and Tim Walton and everybody else flying down there gets a chance to make the last shot, and they have one more sleep on this, and then they make an announcement on Friday, you would hope that would bode well for Ohio State, and that we don't get back into parsing stuff out on campus visits and, this is what your locker room would look like and blah, 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 blah. I mean, you should be able to he's done all of that. This needs to be kind of like business here. Okay. This is our plan for you. This is how we see things working out. Oh, by the way, here is our NIL offshoot or whatever. This may be the number that they're saying, but that's between you and them. So I don't know. We'll see.
I think the SEC rule is fine. It's post spring that you can't transfer from one SEC school to another SEC school and play right away. I believe that is the SEC rule that they put in. Now, lawyers could probably challenge that and be like, well, why is the SEC different? And the SEC is going to be like, well, it just means more. And the judge will have to hit this gavel and be like, case closed. The Ohio State thing, tomorrow is the last day to add add a class without applying for some special dispensation or without a petition, which means there are times to add a class after that with a petition. And so I wouldn't worry about the classes, in terms of this right now. I think Ohio State would still be fine. And obviously they're still recruiting him, so they would still be fine to be able to do whatever they need to do. And, next week it's like you send in a petition, like, we would really like to get this guy into bowling. Can we get him into the bowling class? And the bowling instructor, the bowling professor, Dr. Weber, is going to be like, well, I run a really serious program here, and we can't just let people come in willy-nilly. Does he know how to keep score? And then, of course, they'll Google it, and they'll find out and be like, yeah, I can keep score. And then they're like, all right, you've just qualified for this class because the first 2 weeks we spend learning how to keep score. So if you already know that, and I only use that analogy is because when I took bowling as a college senior, I couldn't keep score, and I also couldn't get to class on time, and it was a 1:30 class, and so I had to drop it because we were out too late the night before, and just impossible to get up for a 1:30 class. And the funny thing is, and I may have told this story before, the only reason we took that class is so that we could start drinking after the class because the bowling alleys on campus, the Woody, the Archie's alley or the Woody alley or whatever had a bar there. So you finish your last class of the week on Friday, and then you just start drinking. And we couldn't even get up in time to go drinking.
Well, Tony and I have something in common because I took and withdrew from bowling, but I remember mine being like at 8 a.m. And it just wasn't going to happen. I took more PE classes only to withdraw from them than anybody. I tried golf. I tried a lot of things, and they all seemed to be very early and very far away from wherever I was living on campus. And I was just looking to start my day of drinking, and it never happened.
I took all the officiating classes, which was great. I will note that for some reason in the 80s, Ohio State, you could pass their officiating class, but the OHSAA would not give you a license. There was some kind of disconnect between Ohio State and the OHSAA. Ohio State housed all their championships at, the OHSAA played them at Ohio State. And now here we are, fast forward 27 years later, 30 years later, and they don't have anybody to officiate any of these games. But back in the late 80s, they wouldn't let Ohio State certify anybody to become an official through their officiating classes. So that was one. And Chris Spielman missed the football officiating final to go and accept the Lombardi Award in Houston, to which I said, I'm sure he got an A on the final, which got a good chuckle, because we all knew he was in Houston that day to get the Lombardi Award. But my son took the golf class, and he's nearly a scratch golfer. And I saw him in a tournament one time on 3 holes make an 8-footer, a 15-footer, and a 20-footer in succession putting. He's one of the best putters I've ever met. And the instructor in the golf class was trying to show him how to putt. And I'm like, this is one of the best putters in North America, and you're going to show this person how to putt. But okay, sure, why not?
I took the officiating classes as well, and I actually passed both of those classes, and they were like, yeah, you have to go and do this application process and yada, yada, yada to get that. And I'm like, or I can officiate games over at Larkins Hall. And I did that for a year and got cussed at by fraternity guys and faculty and staff teams and everything else. And I said, $15 and a popsicle are not worth this type of aggravation of getting yelled at. If I wanted that, I could just go back to the fraternity house.
The two great stories I have, one, Larkins Hall doing the officiating. One of the supervisors' name was Ron Greenfield, and he had his dip and his cup. Inside the building, he's got his dip cup, to do this. And Ron would send us off every shift to do these intramural games with the fraternities and whoever. He'd say, now, don't be a dick, but don't take any shit. That was the fine line that we were to walk. We were to not be a dick, but to not take any shit. So those are words to live by. The baseball class, the guy's name was Lou Brown. What a perfect name to teach the baseball umpiring. Wasn't that the name of the manager in Major League years later? This guy, Lou Brown, was the guy who ran the umpiring class. And he says, if there is a close play at first base, is the runner safe or is the runner out? And everybody puts their hand in the air, says, well, if the runner gets to the base before the fielder has caught the ball, then he's safe. And all these other things. And the tie goes to the runner. And Lou Brown goes, no. You're missing the point. If there's a close play at first base, is the runner safe or is the runner out? And everyone's like, no, I don't know. He goes, listen, with every out that is recorded, you are one out closer to the Budweiser. So there you go. Words to live by. So there you go. If it's a close, bam, you're out. So there you go.
Yeah, it was like when I was a tennis instructor one year, and it was like about shots. It was like, when in doubt, call it out. When in doubt, call it out.
Reminds me of our high school baseball coach set up buckets around the gym when we would have to practice in the gym for kids to spit their chew in.
Oh my God.
He set up buckets around, and then about 2 or 3 weeks later, he marches into the locker room with the AD, and the AD gives us this speech about chewing tobacco, and it's outlawed. It's against school regulations and rules, and the coach is standing right next to him. And then he tears into everybody about chewing tobacco. Okay.
I learned it from you. Yeah, we had a guy, one of my best friends, who said something wrong to the gym teacher in like our sophomore year. And then the gym teacher's like, I'm going to need you to spit that out and go see the principal. Like the gym teacher got the last word. I know you're in my class chewing. We were outside playing softball or something, and he didn't like the gym teacher making a call against him. And he said, I'm going to need you to spit that out and go see the principal. So, yeah, he got the last word. And my buddy did not get to play the first half of the season in basketball because of it. Yeah, it sucked.
All right.
Like the power.
Yeah.
Mika has brought her wish list of recruits, and it's pretty sizable. And we also have a
thumbs up, thumbs down here.
Yeah, we'll just line you up, Kevin, and you can go through them. But before we get to that, this is somewhat related with Yakov, of course, taking the current and going the historical. Edric Houston, more Bruce Smith or Reggie White? I don't know if Kevin has analyzed the swim move yet.
I don't do comps.
Okay.
Who's better, Bruce Smith or Reggie White?
Wow.
Can we just
Reggie White is
Reggie Smith was a Dodgers outfielder. Could he be Reggie Smith?
Yes, he was. He was a good one.
Isn't I think Reggie White is considered the best of all time. So, and Bruce Smith is like second.
Yeah.
So maybe Edric Houston is just himself, and he'll be the third greatest NFL defensive end of all time. Let's not put too much pressure on him and compare him to either of these guys. Let's just let him be third all by himself.
I can agree with that. And
Reggie White had the greatest speech to the Wisconsin legislature. I know that. A lot of truths were told that day.
Mika, I've lost your list. I don't know where it is at this point.
They are still recruiting Matty Augustine. I mean, again, it's January. I'm not getting too caught up in, start watching where kids are going on their little unofficial pizza party visits and stuff like that. But Ohio State has not backed off of Matty Augustine out of Connecticut, the Brunswick school where Miles Walker came from. There are a couple kids out of that school that they are recruiting. That was the one name I remembered seeing Mika post. I know she also had like a laundry list of players, and yeah, I would, I'd like the lottery to hit me too. Zahir Mathis is in. London Merritt, they have a good shot at. Justin Hill, I believe they'll land. Cedric Works, they have to offer. I like Brandon Caesar. Dorian Brew supposed to make his announcement, I think, on the 24th. Ohio State is trending well there. Trey McNutt, I mean, you have to just make a decision at that position of what you're going to do there. I think they're going to land Carter Lowe. And I don't really have a great read on Quentin Simmons at this point, but I think I've touched upon everything there.
What happens if they offer Quentin Simmons?
Then they get him, I think.
David Greenshield, thank you for the contribution. Any more news on a new offensive coordinator?
Well, we asked Ryan Day that yesterday. Tim May kind of ambushed him with a couple of questions about Ross Bjork, and then threw in there, is anything imminent about you naming an offensive coordinator? I mean, they have an offensive coordinator named Brian Hartline. I think if they do hire somebody, it would be termed as a co-coordinator, is how it would probably go, because they're not going to demote the guy who gives you all these shiny objects at wide receiver. And he said, when there is something that I need to let you know about, I will let you know about it. So he said, we are continuing to look at everything. So I don't know.
I think the fact that he said that he didn't say anything like I don't even know what you're talking about. The fact that there's no denial is pretty clear to me that this is in the process of happening. And I think you're probably also waiting on the NFL to wrap up, if that's where the coordinator is that he's looking at.
Yeah. There was a lot of smoke around Jason Candle from Toledo, but doesn't seem like that's going to happen now. So he was making $1.1 million as the coach at Toledo. The coordinators at OSU are getting $1.5 to $2 million. So it would have been a step up in pay if they had agreed on that, but maybe Toledo is going to hang on to Candle, and he's got 2 MAC titles and had a really good team this past year that didn't win the MAC, but some of that was DeQuan Finn too, who obviously is off to greener pastures somewhere else. So where did he end up? Baylor? Yeah, that sounds right. So, not sure if I would have thought by now that he'd be in a Big Ten head coach at like an Indiana or an Illinois or somewhere like that, but that hasn't materialized just yet for Jason Candle.
And that's why you're seeing some of these guys, and maybe not Jason Candle, time will tell if that happens, going and kind of resetting the deck a little bit and going and being a coordinator at a major school to raise their visibility. I mean, Sean Lewis left Kent State to go to Colorado. We know that didn't necessarily work out there, but now he's the head coach at San Diego State. And, I think sometimes a change of scenery, I mean, Jason Candle for a while was mentioned on a lot of those middle jobs, and I don't hear his name mentioned as much. And sure his agent is probably like, yo, we might need to change things up unless you really like going to Tony Packo's all the time, which who wouldn't? But if you want to sit there and go to a bigger program, we may need to change things up.
We found a good steak place in Toledo too, didn't we, Noon? With our friends Kyle Rowland and David Briggs. We found.
I didn't go. Would you go to Mancy's? I didn't. I wasn't
You
there.
were with us. I thought that's been about 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, I do remember. Yeah, no, that wasn't Mancy's. Yeah, no, that was a good steak. It was a good steak. I couldn't tell you where it was.
Candle's team went undefeated in the MAC before they lost the conference championship game, and he's had a run of nice teams.
Yeah.
They also played and lost a 1-point game in the most bizarre broadcasted bowl game I've ever heard by Barstool Sports, which is not surprising, of course. But the announcers were
ending their
reading
association with that. I don't think they're going to do that again. It was up against like a New Year's Six game too, so it made no sense.
Well, the New Year's Six games were so bad. I actually checked out some of this broadcast, and then I was intrigued. I was half amused, half just cringeworthy material on the other half that I was taking in of this broadcast, where they were actually reading tweets throughout the broadcast of viewers who were telling them how bad they were at broadcasting the game. It was quite the spectacle.
Gross.
Before we head on out, I'll just throw this big picture scenario question out, because in less than a span of a year, we could go back to post-spring and the transfer portal approach of this program. And it was more, okay, we have a need, let's fill it. We recruit at an elite level. We're not going to go all in on this. And now it looks like this is, bam, we're going for it. Is that more a product of Michigan's in this conference? Look at what they've done. They've made us look bad, and we need to go for it. Not that Ohio State's ever been in a position where they've said the goal is not the national championship, or is NIL just finally taken hold and they have driven it to the place where they can make these moves?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's out of necessity. I mean, you needed a quarterback, and Seth McLaughlin kind of fell in their lap, the kid from Alabama. It seems to me that the one glaring weakness is offensive tackle. I don't think you can go into 2024 with Simmons and Fryer as your tackles unless both of them magically make some kind of level of major improvement. I think they'll find out in the spring whether Tosh Bola or Montgomery or somebody else is going to steal one of these tackle jobs away from one of those veterans, or push Fryer inside the guard, or I think they're going to mix and match all these combinations to figure out what the best 5-man rotation is for them going forward. There's a lot of evidence there to point to why it should never be put back out there the way it was in 2023. So they could be in the portal after spring football like they were last year looking for a tackle, and got to find one better than Josh Simmons this time around, I think, in the portal, if one exists. So I don't know. That's going to be interesting, and I guess the hope is that you bring along one of those young guys, or that those older guys magically become better somehow, from have the best year of improvement from one year to the next that anybody's ever had, because otherwise, the results, aren't going to look a whole lot different. But I don't know. Then again, the rest of the offense ought to be pretty good. So, but yeah, I think their approach to the portal has been pretty logical to me. Positions where they needed help, you lose 3 running backs, and you went out and got one, Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, and we'll see how he pans out. Had 2 pretty good years at Ole Miss, so they're filling needs, and that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I think that I think Day is feeling the pressure. I mean, it doesn't help that team up north, your biggest rival, goes out and temporarily wins the national championship, and your team, despite all of its issues, probably played them the best out of anybody over the course of the year. And you see them have a celebration at the end of the year, and you're left wondering. And I do think, to Steve's point, NIL is kind of figured out to a little bit. I mean, of course, as soon as you figure it out, it's like Facebook. We're just gonna change the algorithm on you, and you're not gonna know how it works anymore. But there are a lot of forces in play, and even though you had Ross Bjork come out and extol the virtues and everything of Ryan Day, I think that even if it's subconsciously, that you don't have your guy in there anymore. Gene Smith, who was instrumental in Urban Meyer handing the game controller over to Ryan Day, will no longer be there. I don't know if the university president, they haven't been able to keep one long enough as of late for that to really be an issue. But you bring in Ted Carter, who certainly demands a level of excellence and, in his life, military man and everything else. I think you do feel that your flank is exposed a little bit. And if, we're going to try and institute these things over the next 3 years. No, you're going to institute these things over the next 3 weeks, because it's clobbering time now. It's clobbering time.
Yeah, your rival, at least for the time being, is being recognized as a national champion. That's how you have to kind of proviso it. The team up north.
Tony, come on. I know you got something smart ass to say over there.
Team up north.
I mean, you know what? I respect what Michigan has been able to do. I know Ohio State people want to see Ohio State match what Michigan has done. I would just say I hope Ohio State, when they decide to do that, they do it legally. That way they can keep it.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Joe.
All right, Kevin, what do you have working this week?
Hell if I know. Keeping an eye on the portal, on the coaching ranks, everything else. We've been starting to talk about what the next eating challenge may be. I'll try and knock out a Big Me Kickoff live show tomorrow at some point, but generally every day I plan on doing that. Breaking news comes in, and Evil Tom Moore comes in and says, no, we're doing it under my show's brand. So I'll eventually get my own show on there at BuckeyeHuddle.com.
Tony.
Dropped a Buckeye Weekly today, a Listen to Questions episode. One of the questions was about which would be the better addition for Ohio State, Caleb Downs or Caden Proctor. So we talked about that there. Also dropped a piece today on Jaden Bonsu, freshman safety for Ohio State. I'm going back and looking at each of the freshmen from 2023 and writing about what they did this past season, what they could be doing next year and beyond. And I'm hoping to get something written about Will Howard in the next couple of days, looking at a bunch of clips of his play from last season and also against the Alabama in 2022. So that should be somewhere this weekend at BuckeyeHuddle.com.
I enjoy those, Tony. I think you scared a lot of Buckeye fans with that first ream of clips of Will Howard throwing 3 picks against Oklahoma State or whatever it was.
I love your stuff. These are all the bad throws Will Howard has ever made his entire life, back to when he was 9 years old. You're a bulldog. I don't know how you do it.
I was just pulling just the dropbacks last night, and it's not all good. And like when I did this last year, and people were seeing like Josh Simmons give up a sack, or Victor Cutler, get held, or David Sniggbenosin got trashed by some fans, and it's like, these are not highlights. These are clips of what they were doing every single time they were targeted, or every single time they dropped back, or this is a run. So it's not highlights. It's just actual clips of reality.
Very good. Steve, what's going on this week?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just keeping really busy with everything we got going on. Bucknuts.com, football and basketball, and the men are hosting Penn State Saturday. The women, the circus is coming to town. Caitlin Clark, Iowa, Sunday noon, and NBC is actually going to show that game. they have some rights to some women's basketball, I guess, with the Big Ten, and Peacock and NBC will be showing that game at noon. And of course, former Ohio State star CJ Stroud on the road in the playoffs. Who are they playing? Houston is at Baltimore, the top seed. So a really tough assignment for Houston, obviously, Saturday, the first playoff game of the weekend. So that'll be a lot of fun, I think, for OSU fans to tune in and watch that after the way he trashed my Cleveland Browns. So
he and Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, subscribe, and that way you know when we're going live. It's typically Wednesday, but we got to move schedules around from time to time. Please use the Amazon link. Here's the deal. It's the same shopping experience. It is transparent to you and doesn't cost you a penny. For Tony, for Steve, and for Kevin, of course, we will see you next week.